We're back again this week for another episode of Cooking with Katina. This week we're going to make an easy white bean rosemary garlic soup. I'm trying to find recipes that use pantry staples because I know some of you might be having a hard time getting to the grocery store or even finding what you need when you do get to the grocery store. So it's a good idea to be able to use up the things that we have in our pantry. And this is a great soup for a chilly day, and it's not a super heavy soup, so it's good even in the summertime. So we're going to start out with 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a soup pot. Actually, I'm just making a little bit here, so I'm not going to use a huge pot. We got about 2 tablespoons of olive oil there. And then we are going to heat that oil up a little bit, and then we're going to saute 4 cloves of garlic until it's fragrant. I like to use this minced garlic in water. It's a little lazy, but it works for me. It's always a really good quality, and that way I don't have to chop garlic. So 1 teaspoon is about the equivalent of a clove, so we'll get those in there. So we'll let that come together and start to get fragrant. Then while I'm waiting, we're going to puree 1 can of cannellini beans with the liquid from the can. You can use your blender or food processor. I'm using my immersion blender to make it a little bit easier. Okay, and then you're going to use 2 more cans of cannellini beans, drained. And let's check on our garlic here. Turn it up a little bit. And we pureed the 1 can of beans just to add some thickness to the soup. I know that Heather has talked to you before about pureeing or mashing beans into a soup is a great way to make it thicker. So that's the purpose of pureeing those. So the garlic is smelling pretty good right now. So we're going to go ahead and add the other 2 cans of cannellini beans. And 2 cups of broth. Vegetable broth, chicken broth, whatever you have. I have chicken broth today. But I think that a vegetable broth would also be pretty tasty. So in that goes. Put the lid back on here. And then we are going to add our pureed beans. Give it a good stir. And this soup is really versatile. There are a lot of variations that you'll be able to see in the recipe. If you have carrots, celery, onions, you can add that when you're sauteing the garlic. You could actually cook some bacon and use the bacon fat to saute the garlic. You could put in some ham. You could put in fresh zucchini. Any of those would be really good. Just giving that a little stir. And then we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary. And this is dried rosemary, and that is what the recipe calls for. The recipes on this website are really great for, the recipe is called Budget Bytes, so they're great to help you eat on a budget. And then we're going to put in 1/4 teaspoon of thyme, dried thyme again. And just a little pinch of red pepper flake. And I think that that could probably be optional if you can't take the heat. We don't want to cause you any problems. Just a little bit of fresh cracked pepper. And then we're just going to give it a stir. We're going to bring this up to a boil. And it should come up pretty fast. The soup is great with some crusty bread. You can drizzle some olive oil on it when you're serving it. You can also, you could put some pesto in it and swirl it through. Any of those things would be really, really good. I'm going to clean up a little bit here while I'm waiting for that to come to a boil. I'm going to write the date on my vegetable stock so I know when I used it. Because it does have the lid, it is safe to go into the fridge until I need it again, but I do like to know when I used it, so it doesn't go bad in the fridge. And it's usually good for about 7 days after you open it. We'll talk a little bit about dried herbs. Ideally, for most dishes, you like to get fresh herbs if you can, but when you're cooking from your pantry, dried herbs are great. If you're cooking in like a slow cooker, you would want to add your dried herbs at the end, and you don't add as much as you would fresh herbs. The dried herbs are more concentrated than the fresh herbs. So a little goes a long way to an extent. You do want to make sure that you have enough for some good flavor. And I know I've talked about beans before. They're a great source of protein. You could also use, probably if you didn't want to use a cannellini bean, you could use a navy bean or a great northern bean. I probably wouldn't use any of the kidney beans unless that's just all you have. The bean itself isn't going to taste that much different. It would just look kind of different. So a white bean is going to be your best bet for this. And this is going to come up to a boil here shortly. And this soup also is good to freeze. It freezes very well in individual servings. So you can just take one out of the freezer and let it thaw and warm it up for lunch or dinner. Like I said, great with crusty bread. I don't have any crusty bread today, but I really wish I did. And this soup, I believe, costs something like, I don't know, less than $2 a serving, which is pretty cost efficient if you're watching your budget. And like I said, these are probably things that you have in your pantry. If for some reason you didn't have fresh garlic, you could use garlic powder. You would just skip the cooking part, the sautéing part of the garlic. The taste will be a little bit different, but not noticeably so. Let that come to a nice boil, and I'm sure it'll be really good when it's done. Try to speed it along a little bit. I will link the recipe in the comments. And if you guys have any questions about any of the recipes, you can always comment on the Facebook post, and I'll be happy to answer the questions. You can also reply in the emails. I know that I've mentioned that all of these are going out in the weekly emails as well, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the recipes. Yeah, give me something to do. Interact with me, connect with me. So we're boiling pretty good. The recipe says to let it boil for 15 minutes. I'm not going to keep you here with me for 15 minutes. Bradley is shaking his head no. He is not going to stand there and hold and record me for another 15 minutes. But this is the boil that you're looking for. And then you would cover it and turn it down and let it simmer gently like this for like I said, for 15 minutes. And then at the end, you can mash some of the additional beans in here down a little bit just to make it a little bit thicker. Just going to do that with the spoon a little bit. Or you don't have to. If you like a thinner soup, that's perfectly fine too, to just leave the beans whole. Give them a little mash, and it will thicken up a lot more on its own after it's had a chance to boil and simmer for 15 minutes. But like I said, we're a little pressed for time, so I don't want to wait that long. So we have some garlic rosemary white bean soup, very hot. I'm gonna attempt it.
Gonna burn yourself.
Well, probably, but hopefully not.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
It's a really nice soup. It's, like I said, it's not too heavy. Kind of great any time of the year, really. And any of the additions, like I said, the carrot, the celery, the onion, bacon, ham, kale or spinach stirred in at the end would be fantastic. Any of those would make a great addition and a nice dinner for you, or lunch. So that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with another recipe, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.